Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, part-time comedian, full-time president, says Putin is not gearing up for a ceasefire, which many are hoping is the outcome of the Russia-America meeting in Alaska this Friday. Zelensky says, oh no skis, Putin is readying for a new offensive. And I actually agree with the man this time. Not because he's a strategic mastermind, mind you, but because even a broken clock is correct twice a day. He's right, but only sort of, because the nation doesn't gear up for a ceasefire. Russia holds 20% of Ukraine, and in some sections of the front line in the south of Ukraine, all it would take is the convergence of two different things to come together for Ukrainian catastrophe. First thing, easing or relaxing of Ukrainian defenses, coinciding with a slight push from the Russian forces, and we could see a breakthrough that results in the rapid loss of territory to the Russian bear. You don't stand down and rob yourself of that potential breakthrough option just because you're meeting Donny Boy in Alaska this Jummah, Friday, right? You keep the cards that you have in your hand. It's just basic military strategy. But honestly, I don't know. Zelensky, anyway, the way he talks, it doesn't sound like he knows what he's doing. For better or worse, I'm not taking sides. I'm just giving you the analysis, right? Now, my next video will discuss what some are calling already a breakthrough by the Russian forces in Pokrovsk. But back to this topic because I don't want to meander too much. Putin isn't gearing up for a ceasefire because a ceasefire requires simply standing down. You don't have to gear up for it. You don't have to prepare for it because then you give your enemy an advantage. If it doesn't come to a ceasefire, now you've just given your enemy a freebie. You've just chucked him a freebie because now your forces are not deployed the way they were. And ahead of negotiations with America, Putin will want the world to know the exact opposite. They will want the world to know that Russia can, if it wants, push hard, slam itself against the comparatively struggling, wavering, thinned out Ukrainian defenses. The threat of an offensive is part of the dance that Russia and America are dancing. Each side will want to show that they can do more. Russia will say, we can push harder if we want and absolutely slam your proxy into the wall. The wall being the Dnipro River. And Ukraine, well, America can say, well, we're going to keep funding Ukraine, right? We're going to keep sending them arms that Europe will pay for. So that, each side will want to do that. So the other side is more inclined to offer favorable ceasefire terms. Now, let me tell you the geopolitical implications of Russian forces actually preparing for a fresh summer offensive. As Zelensky rightly points out, they are doing. They are preparing, right? They are preparing for the option to be there. Ukraine already has lost, in whole or in part, 4 of their southern oblasts. Oblast is just province, but in Eastern European culture. Along the DLZK front, Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, Kherson. Ukrainian manpower shortages are well documented, even by Ukrainian sources. I'm not just, making this up. I'm not just pulling this out of a hat, right? If you're used to the Western spin, the framing I'm using, the analytical, unbiased framing might sound to you pro-Russian, but I would say check your bias. Check the propaganda you've been ingesting, because the Western media sources, you go to them, they've been telling you for the last 3 years that Russia's losing. How can you be losing and still hold 20% of the territory, and you're not even using an aggressive, fully committed war stance? You're using an attritional, slow burn stance. How does that make sense? Right? Anyway, Ukraine is using drone regiments to replace people, right? Manpower on the front lines to shore up holes in their defenses because of the lack of men. That's how bad it is, right? So far, though, this has worked. It has to be said. It has held Russia back, but only because Russia has long ago switched to an attritional war stance, meaning low casualties, but slow progress, if any progress, right? Russia doesn't want to send hundreds of men in, fight, defending men dug in, using drones, and, Russians will be losing their lives to, flying little stupid helicopters with, quadcopters. No thanks, right? Putin's like, no, not that, niet, right? He's not interested in that for the time being. Good for Russians who are on the front lines, of course, I suppose. But the key point that people aren't talking about, the key point the Western media is not talking about, if Russia wanted, they could push and break straight through Ukrainian defenses. It would cost Russia a lot, so they're not doing it. But they could. They have the option. They have the capability. And Ukraine doesn't have the capability of stopping Russia if it really doesn't hold back its punches anymore and really swings in its whole body into the punch. But the cost in equipment and manpower are estimated to be high enough for Russia for that kind of offensive. It will be too expensive, so the bear holds back. Russia has decided it makes more sense to hold back, which is why this is a 3-year conflict without a ceasefire. Reports suggest over 100,000 Russian troops have been gathered on the Pokrovsk and nearby fronts for an advance if required. It's a threat. But I don't expect this to materialize, analytically speaking. Instead, I expect more attritional fighting from Russia to minimize casualties, while drones and missiles are used against the rest of Ukraine, the back lines, as it were, Kiev, the capital, for example, to continue to keep the pressure on the Kiev administration, led by former comedian and current part-time comedian Volodymyr Zelensky, to come to an agreement on Russian terms. Russia wants peace. Ukraine also wants peace. But Russia wants peace on Russian terms. This is what the Western news outlets won't tell you. Russia wants peace, but on Russian terms, because the geostrategic reality on the ground is Russia is in the advantage. Russia has 20% of the territory. So a peace comes under Russian terms. That's a reasonable starting position. Ukraine is not accepting that. They want to act like we're winning. The Ukrainians are winning. So peace has to come, on our terms, which makes no sense. But Zelensky still holds that position. Why? Because Western Europe and America somewhat, but Western Europe mostly, continue to push, continue to supply the money, the equipment, the intelligence needed to keep Ukraine in the fight, not to help them win. They can't win. Even Western Europe knows you can't win against Russia. But we can keep Ukraine in the fight long enough as a sort of zombie, as a sort of, a weekend at Bernie's type situation, while we in Western Europe rearm. And Ukraine's taken the bait, or the Ukrainian administration has taken the bait. They said, yes, we will be your zombie speed bump that slows Russia down as they head west, or as they try to at least stop NATO heading further east, right? This is the dynamic. In short, to summarize, Zelensky is correct. Putin is not preparing to stand down. But Zelensky is not right because he's a strategic mastermind. If he was, many analysts argue he would have taken the deal with Russia 3 years ago that you might not know about. The deal that allowed him to keep all of Ukraine except for Crimea in exchange for promising not to join NATO. Instead of accepting that deal, he was about to shake Putin's hand, and then Boris Johnson was like, excuse me, if I may just butt in. UK Prime Minister at the time, who ironically has a first name that sounds quite Russian. Boris? Are you serious? Boris Ursus from Warhammer 3? Boris Johnson was like, I don't want to digress, even though it's very enjoyable to digress. Muffles knows exactly what I'm talking about, but I don't think you should accept the Russian deal, so to speak. And he convinced Ukraine not to accept the Russian deal. He said, we will back you, the UK will back you if you fight Russia. And you stand a chance because we're really strong, we'll help you, sort of, not really, but we're willing to fight to the last man. Last Ukrainian man. Terms and conditions apply. So, following his advice, Ukraine is now a shattered husk of a nation that looks set to become a rump state, which is a weakened nation after a conflict, after some sort of geopolitical, diplomatic finagling. Potentially, new Ukraine could have zero access to the Black Sea if things go particularly sideways for them, for Baby Bear, in the coming months. Loss of Mykolaiv and Odessa oblasts would, for example, cut off Black Sea access completely. Time will tell how things turn out, and I'll be here to report to you the news and the analysis. Russia-Ukraine conflict I cover at least once a week, unless something serious is happening, as I try to get into a habit of being able to cover everything. For the long videos, you are in the right place already, wherever you're watching this. For shorter videos, I am actually putting out some shorter videos for those who are interested. They'll be on a different platform though, so go check that out if you are interested. Otherwise, support me however you can. It could just be hearts and comments and bookmarks or shares, or it could be on my Patreon, which you'll probably find in my TikTok bio if you're watching this video here. Otherwise, stay frosty, and I will see you for the unbiased news and analysis without the Western spin on the next one. I'm Muffles.